Hey, it's Travis. Too many camp directors run just on gut feel. Our free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic is your dashboard for resilience. Take it today at camp.mba/Travis. Again, that's camp.mba/Travis.
This is Camp Hacker. Come find our show notes and our blog for camp directors and leaders at camphacker.tv.
Hello, Camp Pros, and welcome to a special Camp Hacker podcast interview edition. I'm pleased to welcome Kevin Kelly to the show. Kevin, who's labeled as the senior maverick of Wired Magazine and is on the board of some really cool projects and doing some really interesting things. Longtime listeners to this show would have been indirectly influenced by Kevin because of our Tool of the Week segment in the Camp Hacker podcast, and that is directly inspired by one parts of Kevin's website called Cool Tools. And Kevin, both of the Cool Tools books have been Tools of the Week at different points. So I want to take a minute and just welcome you to the Camp Hacker Show and thank you for being with us.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Kevin's newest book is called The Inevitable: Understanding the 12 Technological Forces That Will Shape Our Future. And Kevin, as you can imagine, we as an industry are people who love the personal connection between older teens, young adults, and younger kids, and that mentoring relationship. And there's a lot of leeriness in our industry about technology and how it's affecting how we work with kids. And I'm going to come back around to that, how technology is going to influence how families and kids relate to each other and what their futures would be. But I want to start with some direct questions that come out of my reading of the book. So, and I know from reading the interviews that you've done in the past that that you're inspired by technology and interested in it and really seem to be sucking up all of the information that you can to process it. And The Inevitable has been a great read in terms of helping me get a feel for what is coming. But people tend to be black and white about these things, and they really see technology as being a barrier to connection with nature or even a spiritual connection. But you're able to dive deep into the thinking about tech and still maintain a connection to nature, an interest in those things, and even an interest in your own spiritual life. What's your recipe for that to be able to balance those two sides of it?
Well, I do tend to believe in Sabbaths, sabbaticals, vacations, minimizing things if at all possible, and being pretty selective, maybe in the kind of the Amish way of even choosing things that may seem to the outward eye to be inconsistent. So our family has never had TV. Our kids grew up without it. Yet we were the first to have the internet on our block,
right.
And Netflix. So I was one of the original subscribers to Netflix, and so I think being not afraid to be selective and pick this and not that, even if it doesn't seem to be consistent. If it works for you, then that's one of the things I would suggest. And then, you may have to make it a point, and we do make it a point to try and get out into the into nature as much as possible. I am fortunate and privileged to live. Our house is right up against basically a national park, right. And yet we're in almost within sight of downtown San Francisco. It's kind of curious here how that works, but that's the advantage is that we have coyote and fox in our backyard. And bobcat, and up on the hill is mountain lion. So, and yet within 17 minutes, I can be parked in front of the offices of Wired and south of Market, San Francisco. So that's part of how we do it. Not everybody has that option, but most people could. The nature is a lot closer than you think if you give a wide version to nature.
Yes.
We at Long Now, where I'm a board member, we had a woman give a talk just last month talking about the fact that there is no such thing as a completely untouched nature in the world today.
Right.
Everything has been groomed by hundreds of thousands of years of human presence. And in some ways, an overgrown meadow, an overgrown lot in a city can have as much diversity and as much wildlife going on as a national park, and that's actually close. And if you are aware of that, you can get almost as much from that, and walk in a big park as you could outside in Yosemite. And so that there's people underestimate the power of that small area, what it can do. So anyway, so I think that's it is available to people, and people should take advantage of it. And I think you definitely want to leave behind that, so that when you return to the technology, you have renewed enthusiasm, you have a new perspective. Each time you leave it and come back, I think it gives you an additional perspective. You also exercise a different part of your brain when you're out of it.
Yep.
And I think it's kind of like diverse foods. You want to have as many. The healthiest food is actually very diverse, and so you want to have as much variety in your diet as possible. And the same thing with your sensory. You want to have as many different and varieties of interactions as you can, from drawing by hand to drawing with the computer to typing to writing. So the more muscles you can kind of exercise that way, the better. And the last thing I would say about that is it's not a binary thing. As you said, people tend to think of this as black and white, but there's nothing to me that's been as exhilarating about this idea that there's in-betweens and convergences and mixes as Pokemon Go, which is getting people, it's sort of the embedded digital into the physical realm, which I've been talking about for years and years, which is that we're going to put the digital embedded into the physical. And that, imagine planting Pokemon hidden deep in the forest and getting kids out there to hunt for experiences. It's not just going to be gathering Pokemon. They're going to go out and maybe they'll have VR spectacles on or something, but they'll have an experience after, kind of like orienteering, running through the woods, trying to find things, getting rewards. There is so much to do. This is not the black and white world of you're either in your basement not moving or you're out hiking up a mountain. No, there's tons in between.
Yes, of course. And it sounds like you're describing almost a consciousness. So you're taking a point to note, taking the time or providing the opportunity to notice those things.
Right. You're being deliberate. I mean, I think that's the Zen attitude of the world. I've talked about this before, but the Zen monks have this thing where you sit. If you're going to sit, you sit. If you're going to walk, you walk, but you don't wobble. You kind of do one or the other, and you do it wholeheartedly at the time, deliberately. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what photography is. When the difference between, say, photography or just walking around is that you are very deliberate about what you're seeing. You have to. You're focusing on something. You're paying attention. You're looking at something deliberately instead of just glancingly. And so for me, photography is something I bring when I go outside to nature. So I have technology, but it's actually assisting me in looking at things. Can I walk by something, but if I have a macro lens on something, I'm going to look down and see the little tiny lichen and see the little forest of lichen, the little miniature thing. And suddenly there's this whole world that I would not have seen because I've deliberately tried to see something. And that camera is a crutch, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's a device that that harnesses or focuses my and helps me be deliberate. And so there's in that way, we can use these things, technology, to help us be deliberate about what we're conscious of in nature. A microscope can do the same thing too.
Yep. Yeah. That intentionality that you're describing, specifically talking about nature in that instance, but thinking about how we apply that across wider things. You've talked about tackling societal generational problems with all the opportunities of the coming technologies. How do we, as conscious human beings, how do we sharpen that skill of going from that old quote about the geniuses of our generation just trying to get people to click more ads? How do we move from that transactional thing onto pushing people to do and think about and try to solve bigger generational problems?
Yeah, it's a very profound question, and there is a sense in which, despite our prosperity, we as a society may not be looking far enough out ahead, and I'm involved with a group called the Long Now Foundation, which is trying to foster long-term thinking, generational attitudes, working on things that may not be completed in your own lifetime, and certainly trying to go beyond just the next quarter, which is sort of fundamentally the bias of capitalistic markets. That's very hard. Although occasionally you find someone like a Jeff Bezos or Steve Jobs that may take a little bit longer view, but it's still tough. And by the way, but one of the consequences of a lot of the capitalism is that there is a lot of money being made, and a lot of that private money, that wealth, is being used in the kind of nonprofit world to focus on long-term thinking, things that are grand. And so one answer to that, which is maybe not the only answer, but one answer is you make a lot of money that is taken out of the capital markets and it's used in a philanthropic way. And there is a huge bunch of money there that can be used, and some of it, in all honesty, is being used that way. Not all of it, but a lot of it is. And part of one of the things that we want to do as a society is to elevate that role model, particularly in new areas of the world like China and in Asia, where there's a lot of new wealth and not a lot of role models in that philanthropic model, and to then have good examples of that and to encourage that. And so that's one of the things we can do as a society right now, is to encourage that worldwide, that when people do have wealth, that they can shift it to the long term. And so that's one thing. But the other way, I think, is, in my eyes, is actually to encourage an optimistic view of the future, because I think it's very hard for people to think long term if they don't believe that things are getting better, because in pessimism, in my eyes, actually makes people short term, because they want to solve the thing right now, and I think sometimes the people behave better. I think most times people behave better if they're optimistic and take a longer view. And so I think that we also need to encourage positive views of the future, because there's a tendency in the world of storytelling, which is that a world where a horrible world makes a much better story than a boring world that works.
Yes.
And so there's a bias in Hollywood movies and science fiction against a world that you want to live in, because it doesn't make as good of a story, and we're so hardwired for that and the people are getting so good about telling stories that all these dystopian worlds are the only thing you see. I have not been able to think of a single Hollywood science fiction movie that there was a world on Earth that I wanted to live in.
Right.
And so I think that's a second challenge or hurdle for trying to make a a world that does take the long term is that we need more scenarios of the future that are friendly to us. And I attempted to do a little bit of that in the book, The Inevitable, where I had these vignettes
Yes.
at the end of each trend to try and paint a little picture of something that might be a place that people might want to go.
Right. Right. I love those little, so this is what my day would look like sections of the book. It's certainly a favorite part of what I got out of it. We skipped past quite quickly. I just want to come back for one moment to the Long Now Foundation, because in the work that we do, we were thinking about families and generations, and often some of the people who'd listen to this, their camps would have had relationships with families for now 100 years. And I wonder thinking about the Long Now, what are the questions that the Long Now Foundation is working on, pondering, discussing?
Yeah, the Long Now Foundation tries to be pretty agnostic about its views of the future. It's saying we're not trying to predict the future. We're only trying to encourage people to have their, to make their own prediction, to have not even prediction, but just to take a perspective in which you reward long-term thinking. And we one of the projects we had that hadn't gone very far, but we may resurrect, was trying to hold people accountable for predictions. And so we thought, well, you should be able to make predictions better over time, but there's been no accountability for making a prediction. Anybody can make a prediction, even if it's widely disseminated, maybe even make some impact. But if you're wrong, there's no punishment, there's no penalty. If you're right, people might remember it, but most of them are forgotten. And so it's not that we want to punish people, but we want to elevate the logic. We want to reward the logic for making a good prediction. Mm-hmm. Good meaning accurate, and in that way, kind of cultivate the methodology and bring the better methods forward. And so those who are using inferior methods to make predictions that aren't valid, then they'll be penalized. And so that's just kind of one example of saying that, we can get better. We can kind of encourage people to think long term, and people should be thinking about things out 10 or 20 years, because if you have a business, hopefully the business is around by then, and you have to be doing things now. If you have a family, hopefully you have a generation that will be there in 20, 30 years. And so you can be thinking about that now. We like the quote of Jonas Salk, the guy who did the Salk vaccine, but he says we want to be good ancestors.
Right.
Being a good ancestor is kind of the assignment. And so that's sort of what we're doing. We're mostly at Long Now. We hold a seminar every month. We actually have one this week, which is me. And there are seminars on long-term thinking, people who have various ideas about how we do this, what we should be thinking about, what to think about, how to apply it to diverse things, from food, the long-term thinking from food to transportation to cities to the environment. There are so many ways to apply this, and we're pretty, again, agnostics. There's no right answers. We're just really kind of basically asking the question.
Right. All right. One of the overriding messages, and you said you try to look at these things as an optimist, one of the overriding messages is that there is big change. Big messages of the book is that there is big change coming, but that we can be smart about it or deal with it in positive ways. And as an industry, our industry, who looks after kids for a day at a time or up to 8 weeks at a time, and gives them an experience outside of what they get at home in school. Technology is something that has been a hard transition for our industry, dealing with kids who are used to being connected all the time, and families that are used to being able to easily touch base with their kids over and over again.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So it's been a struggle, but what we're seeing and what you describe in the book is that there will come a point where everything that we have will be connected online in some way. But I wonder if you could talk to the point that you make in the book that in developing AIs and robots to take over all these things, what it's really going to free up people to do is experience-based careers. So for us, it's very much this stuff that the industry does, where providing experiences for families, teaching kids to grow, and giving them some new experiences that they don't get. So that's
I mean, I say that I think most of the roles and tasks we give to the robots are going to be anything that can be defined in terms of efficiency. And camping, summer camp is like probably the least efficient thing around in many ways. And all human relations are, they're inherently inefficient. And so I think our humans will gravitate to that, and hopefully they will actually come to appreciate their value more, maybe even value them more in those kinds of roles. But I am sympathetic to the challenge you have of how much and in what way does technology involved in this. But I do know. I mean, I think basically that these are technological sweets, right? These are sweets, and that we have to kind of treat them like sweets in this I think we're going to have limits. We're just going to simply have to limit them. I think banning them is just it's like banning sugar. You can't really ban it. You just have to kind of moderate it, and you have to kind of be aware of it and do it deliberately and choose when you have it and stuff like that. And I think technological, it's not just going to be phones. It'll be about all these other things as well. Connection, though, is a large part of it. That it's moderated and limited, and I think there'll be a kind of an emerging understanding that's what you do. Most parents are going to be fine if you say we're not going to have sugar in every meal and every food. We're going to restrict it in some ways, and I think the same thing will come to kind of understand, the kinds of little things that people do, putting their phones away. Sherry Turkle, who has a great book, was talking about that they had a box at the front door, and people, when they came in, they put their phones in this box.
Yeah.
It's like the kids piling up the phones on face down on the tables at the restaurants. I think, and then there'll be technological solutions too. I mean, I don't think it's anything wrong with it, but they'll have jammers. Basically, this is this area right here. When you go into it, it doesn't work. It won't work. It shouldn't work. We don't want it to work because we have, it's like going to church. You're going to be quiet. That's just what you do there. And here we don't have these. And I think that's going to be seen as, as good, as something that's just acceptable, wise, and it can be either etiquette or aided by technology. But I think will evolve. I mean, the thing I want to emphasize is that social media is less than 2,000 days old.
Right.
It's just brand new. We have really no idea how it works, why it works. We have no idea how to kind of range it in. It's going to take a generation to kind of just figure it out. And so I think the current model is you try as many experiments as possible. You try stuff, and you don't get wigged out if it doesn't work. You just try something else. And you try it deliberately. These are experiments because we don't know how it works. We don't know. And I think saying we don't know and that we're going to try something is really the best thing right now to do.
Key to success.
Yeah.
I also wonder if the research that comes from the technology the entrepreneurial side of technology, if some of that's going to aid in things like gathering and shifting attention to to things that a recreation professional would be interested in, learning about nature. Like if we can, instead of just being a lecturer, now we have the research to help us become better at saying, I'm going to do this to get your attention and I'm going to keep it because I have some really cool things to show you that are going to have impact on you.
Well, I mean, I was, I'm very bullish on the potential for like virtual reality to be educational. I mean, to me, there's, so this is a little bit of a rant, but there's,
go.
The way virtual reality works is it's not just in your eyes. It's the sense of presence that you have, the sense of being somewhere else, the sense that you have something else is there for real. That sense operates at a much lower, deeper part of your brain than just your eyeballs.
Yeah.
And where you see things, or even where you read them, you actually feel them. These are experiences. And in education, when you are showing someone the 3D volumetric model and they're kind of move it around and play with it and engage with it using their whole bodies. So it's not just sitting down. You are. It can be calisthenic. It can be a cardio workout, and you're engaging with it. And when you're learning there, you remember it differently and deeper. And the most fabulous VR experience I had was something called The Void, where it was a huge room that you're in and you're navigating through it, and you have a vest and gloves and helmet and sound, and it's a full body thing, and it was amazing. Your heart's pumping. You are really going through it, climbing and whatnot. And so there's several things from that. One is that in some senses that's not that far different than climbing over an obstacle course.
Yep.
Okay. Secondly, the point I want to make is that the learning from that operated a very different way than sitting in a classroom reading something, or even watching a movie or watching something on a flat screen. It's much deeper. So it's very easy for me to kind of imagine something that's, again, this hybrid where it's very physical, it's very deep learning, and the third thing I wanted to say was the model for a lot of this, like The Void, was as a kind of like an arcade or theme park thing where you, where they have state of the art and you pay to go, there. So you try, it's a destination.
Yes.
And some of those ingredients are the same thing about camp. And so it's not hard for me to believe in some senses that you could have at camp something that was beyond or different than what kids would have at home. Right. Maybe in this kind of overlay where you have a very physical space that has an overlay.
Yes.
And it's kind of like paintball. It's just something you can't do in your backyard. You need that arena to do it in, and there can be a kind of a learning that's not at all about sitting in your butt. It's very much about doing and being, and it's of a type that simply may be hard to get any other way.
Right. Well, one of the one of the big biases of our industry, I feel, is that so many people, camp leaders, feel that kids have to get away, physically leave the city, or go to a special park to have the kind of experiences that a lot of us have had growing up, where we've had this magical experience, tried these great things because we felt confident in doing so. But I think a bias is that this has to be a place away. And maybe the summer camp industry of 20 years from now is hiring these same great people with young adults and giving them these great skills of looking after kids, and having those families bring the experience to themselves. So you have kids from 7 time zones in one place virtually, developing relationships, learning new things, trying stuff that they can't get in school.
It's very possible, and that would be another option too, or maybe even a way to extend the camp beyond some set number of days or weeks. I have said elsewhere, and I think it's absolutely true, that the VR, virtual reality, will become one of the most social of all our social media, because it is going to be incredibly social in many of its forms. And so having worlds that are complete and full and explorable and teachable in that sense is very, very, very plausible. And so you could have a virtual camp somewhere, campground, that would be I think the ones that would be most valuable, the ones where they're different, where it's not just a replication, but they're doing, they don't have gravity, or who knows what it is. And so where you have people, you can have the same thing, mentors and guides and others and experiences. That's definitely one venue, but it's not the only venue, because to me, it's a whole continuum from those where you are at your home and you're participating, to those where you actually are participating in something. Maybe you are in a place that's not in your home, but it may not be 100 miles away. It may be just downtown, to a place that is 100 miles away, and it has nature, but also has some other version of things where there's an overlay on top. So all those are possible. And the thing about technology is that generally we have additional choices rather than removal of old choices. So I mean, you can books, there'll be paper printed books forever.
Yes.
If you want to have a book, you have Kindle book. They'll have other kinds of ebooks. There'll be YouTube plus a movie plus whatever. So all these choices will accumulate, and for me the answer is generally all the above. And I think the camp of the future is really one that has all those different modes.
Right. And Kevin, one of the ideas that I found so attractive in The Inevitable was in the chapter on crowdfunding, when you're talking about digital socialism and being Canadian and not. The word socialism doesn't
bother you, I know,
no,
or Europeans, but the Americans is like, I know, it's a dirty word.
Yeah. So in essence, I mean, to boil it down, this digital socialism you describe is about having a common problem and using new tools to solve that together, and that's really the mission of what we do with this podcast and the other services we offer to the industry, is figure out ways to work together to solve problems. Because the people in the industry believe in what they're doing, what they offer for kids and for families. But how do you see in the future that people with this interest and this desire and the future tools, that they can turn their attention to solving the struggles of a family better with the tools that are coming?
Well, I'm not sure. I think, as you know, I mean, it's a very broad thing. Troubles is wide, and I think there'd be no disagreement between any of us if I said that I don't think technology is always the thing that's needed. I mean, it's like people ask me about technology in schools, and my response is depends on the age, because I think like K-8 or something. To me, most of what happens in school, K-8, is character forming. It's values, attributes, basic skills. It's not about knowledge. And I think it's like more like child rearing at that point. And there, I think technology is really supplemental at the most. It's not. I mean, the kinds of things you're teaching or hoping to teach then are how to learn, the joy of learning, how to be a good person, critical thinking, all these other things that where technology is tangential to it, it's not central. And I think, in human relations, that's was kind of what we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of this, if it's about efficiency, it can go to the bots and robots, but most of it's not about efficiency. It's about these other much messier things. And so I don't necessarily think technology is playing a prime role in those kinds of things.
Gotcha.
Nonetheless, there are, technology itself creates problems, and in those cases, I think technology can be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Like drugs. Drugs are a kind of technology. So I think there's a legitimate role of other technology in trying to treat some kinds of those addictions.
Mm-hmm.
But as a blanket statement, I'm not sure that I see. I'm not so quick myself to always bring technology into these things. I think I'm a pluralist in that sense of like trying to keep as many different solutions, many different ways, many different options open, including the ones that we would think of as not so technological.
Yes.
Take a walk without a camera. Take a walk with the camera. Stay in your home. Do a virtual walk. I mean, have a diversity. To me, really cures lots of things.
Right. Well, then, Kevin, I'd like to change a little bit direction as we come to wrap this interview up. One of the things that I admire that is such a big part of you've stated it's a big part of your development and the way you think is that you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, often through uncomfortable is maybe not the right word, but you challenge yourself in new situations through travel.
Right.
And one of the things that I find frustrating both in America and in Canada that we don't have a culture of a gap year.
Yeah.
Like there is in Europe and in Australia. And I wonder how we get this isn't I'm not looking for a technological answer, but I'm wondering how do we get people to value the travel and the experience of getting out of your hometown?
Yeah. It's not just even the gap year. I mean, I probably said elsewhere, I'm a firm believer in having a mandatory national service for 2 years.
Yeah.
And that national service would include many, many options where we're sending kids overseas, visa, Peace Corps, all this kind of stuff. And so you have your choice. You have to do something for 2 years as a service. And you can work in an inner city in the U.S. You can go to, wherever, Brazil, and work in the hinterlands. You can go. There has to be something, and there'll be probably lots of programs, and some of them would be kind of maybe border in terms of their dysregulation. That's okay too. Yeah. It's like get out for 2 years, get a passport, see your own country from different eyes. Confront the unknown, and then get mixed up with people not from your background. And nothing would, I think, help the U.S. weird, terrible notion of exceptionalism as getting people out and seeing that we're not exceptional in that sense at all. And that, and I'm not speaking about Canada, I'm mostly America, and but I think that kind of real getting outside, looking back and seeing the viewpoint from other people's point of view, whatever else happened would be incredibly transformative for the country. So I think I'd be willing to subsidize that, and let alone just the good that it would do. The country, it's not every single Peace Corps person that I have ever talked to has said exactly the same thing, which is I have no idea whether my 2 years had any effect on those countries, but man, did it change me. Right. And so, but I do think that it had some effect in cumulative motion. So that's what I would do. I don't know. It's possible that this could happen, but that's how I would do it.
Right.
And if you're lucky enough to have any kind of wealth or privilege and you have success, then you definitely should either have your kids or do yourself, whatever it is, take advantage of that, because it's the way that being forced to see differently is, to me, the seeing differently and thinking differently is the entire engine of the new economy. And
right.
And that may be part of what your camps are about, is cultivating that. And in some cases, for many people, nature is different enough from the city that is one of the things that's going on, is they're actually seeing things differently, learning how to see things differently. And it may be that part of what is maybe deliberately emphasized in these kind of camps is that you are cultivating that, seeing the world differently, different point of view, and maybe there's things that can accentuate that even from within the camp experience.
Right. Well, Kevin, I really want to thank you for awesome insights and great ideas and an amazing book. So before I ask my last question, I will tell people that the book is called The Inevitable, and it's by Kevin Kelly, and heartily recommend it. It's great for people in our industry, for parents, for everybody who's thinking past tomorrow, to consider all the different forces that we didn't even talk about them in real specifics, but worth checking out. So I encourage people to please go check out The Inevitable from Kevin Kelly. Kevin, as a final question, I'd like to ask you, when you were a kid or young adult, teen, whichever, was there one first adult who noticed you, who really saw you as an important person?
Well, when I was in high school, I had a track coach who was actually the journalism teacher, and he was very tough, very challenging, and I don't think he saw me different, but he did. But he there was one thing that he did, that was he believed I could run faster than I thought I could run.
Yes.
And that was all. But that was sort of, I kind of, the entire time I kind of was cringing a little bit, because he was like, you had to be on time. There was like no excuse. There was like, he didn't care. It's like, you're going to commit to this or you're not going to commit to it. And there's nothing in between. And, I certainly bristled under that, but at the same time, there was something very refreshing and bracing about it. So it wasn't that he particularly treated me any differently or saw anything special, although, as I said, the one thing he knew is I could run more than I thought, or faster than I thought I could. And he kind of brought me, he moved me up and showed me that he was right. Yeah. So that did stuck with me. And it's the one person I think of right now.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And Kevin, honestly, I'm so grateful that you'd make the time for us and for our listeners. And thanks for a wonderful book.
I really appreciate your great questions and your interest and enthusiasm for my work. And I'm sure your readers will enjoy the book. I really appreciate the time I've had to talk about it. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Take care, Kevin Kelly.
Yep. Bye-bye.
The Camp Hacker Podcast is brought to you by Beth and Travis Allison, summer camp leadership training and marketing consultants. Thanks for listening. Camp Hacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hey, it's Travis. Camp directors often tell me they're just too tired to take on anything new. That's exactly why my free Resilient Camp Blueprint Diagnostic exists. It doesn't add work, it shows you progress. Quick, free, repeatable, you'll know if your systems are paying off without the guesswork. Try it today at camp.mba/Travis. That's camp.mba/Travis.